Hey San Diego, welcome to our podcast. This is another recorded episode of Stay Classy San Diego, with video production provided by MaxLex Media at KCBQ with your host, Steve Wire. This podcast is dedicated to keeping you informed and engaged with the latest political events and trending news in the San Diego area. Join us on a weekly exploration as we sit down with prominent community members, political figures, insightful analysts, business leaders, and more. Don't forget to like our video and subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and enjoy the show. Episode 58, Stay Classy San Diego. I was personally really excited about this episode because it relates to something I like to do, which is play rugby. Josh Henderson, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming on, Josh. He's a professional rugby player for the San Diego Legion, originally from Scotland, but now he plays fly half, and fullback for the Legion. And I want to talk to you a little bit today about the upcoming 2024 season, also reflecting on what was an extremely record-setting successful season 2023 for the Legion. But first of all, thanks so much for coming on the show, Josh. Really appreciate having you.
Nah, look, buzzing to be here. Saw a couple of clips on Instagram. It looks like a great little podcast, and any opportunity to kind of try and grow Legion and grow the game of rugby in America is awesome.
Always. Well, and as I said, this is personal for me. I played rugby in college at first, my school in New England, Bates College, and then at UCLA. And the thing is that rugby, I was always traditionally, I feel like, it's been bigger in Europe, it's been bigger in other countries, but it's also been growing in America the last couple of decades, I feel like, but it's been more on the East Coast. But I feel like the last maybe 5-10 years, we've seen an explosion of rugby on the West Coast in California, not just on the collegiate level, but the youth level as well, like high school, even middle school. So I really want to do anything I can to promote the love of the game, to promote the spread of the game. And so I think doing a segment like this is great with somebody who has their full feet in the water, as it were. So thanks for coming on, Josh. Just a quick introduction about Josh. As I said, he plays for the Legion. He's originally from Scotland. He re-signed with the Legion in 2024 for the Major League Rugby season. He's played 12 matches, I think, or so for the Legion.
About that, yeah.
And he started 8 matches and you've scored 2 tries. So well done there. You played for the Glasgow Warriors in Pro 14 Scotland. You represented Scotland at under 20 level. And you've played for the Scottish national 7-side as well. Yeah. And you also played some rugby in Hong Kong, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
For the
countries in there as well.
Yeah, a lot of international flair there. So USRC Tigers, and then you're also a former Scotland U20 representative as well. Mm-hmm. So a lot of credentials there. But first of all, Josh, I want to talk a little bit about the upcoming season in terms of looking ahead into 2024. How you're sort of feeling about the overall state of the Legion team, maybe some things you're looking forward to, or some challenges for the team to anticipate in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, obviously hugely excited going into next season after such a good season last year. We've got 2 very motivated owners. That's probably the best way to describe them, along with being very competitive guys in Ryan Patterson and Darren Gardner. And they're, put some really good coaches in place that are really good at building teams and building culture on a team and recruitment. And last year we also recruited, first of all, the owners recruited a really good coaching group that I know in 2022 they didn't really get much time with the squad, but 2023 they really got time to build a team, build a culture, and they certainly did that. And within that team and culture that they built, they recruited a lot of experienced players. We've got former All Blacks in our team, countless Super Rugby guys, countless really successful American rugby players as well that know the landscape of the league and the landscape of the country in terms of rugby, and that's hugely important. We had a super diverse group last year that could pull from each other and really went to battle for each other. And we also, as you said, rugby's growing on the West Coast, and we definitely had the best fan group as well. We set a record at our home opener last year of 12,500.
That's fantastic.
At Snapdragon, which was a phenomenal atmosphere, and they really got us through some tough moments last year. In our home games, we're undefeated at Snapdragon. We've never lost the game there. I think we're 10 from 10. And they really, like I said, that fan base were really like the 16th man. They got us through some really tough moments, and we have a lot of kind of gratitude towards what they got us, like what we succeeded last year, and it was awesome to have them.
Yeah, let's talk about that last season then. You guys had a historic season, not just for the club, but for Major League Rugby, right? You had an 18-2 record, correct?
I think it was something like that.
Something like that, and we can just say that, like, as as a whole for the team, obviously very successful, but also just for Major League Rugby, that kind of season, sets a tone, as it were. So how are you able to be so successful as a team, as a squad? Like, what was kind of instrumental to your success? Because I'll tell you firsthand, rugby is not an easy game. Like every 80-minute game is a challenge, and to win, to put together that kind of winning stretch takes some real club chemistry. So talk a little bit about how the team was able to be that successful.
I think, again, it goes back to the kind of squad that the coaches managed to recruit and build. And again, the owners giving them that kind of power to be able to do that. We had a huge amount of depth in terms of selection. Like, training was super competitive. Let's talk about my position specifically. There was 4 10s, like that fly halves in the squad, and I think 2 had played Super Rugby, 1 had played in the Premiership, and I have a decent CV as well. So there was a huge amount of competition there. And then, at scrum half as well, last year we had Nate Osberger, who's an American legend, as a scrum half. But we also signed Jason Higgins, who's a starting scrum half from Chicago. Whoops, he's actually going there. That's why I said that. But he's from Canada.
Yeah.
But and then we had Richard Judd, who's just been signed in Super Rugby, who was there. And obviously Nate moved on to the wing and had, I think he got MVP for the backs in the league and stuff, and he was phenomenal. So, like I said, I think like that depth really gave us competition. So throughout the year, it's a tough season. You've only got 2 weekends off in about 6-7 months. You've got to make sure you're on the ball every weekend playing well. And we had 3 or 4 guys deep in every position that we knew that could go on the field at the weekend and do a job. So that gives you massive confidence.
And I feel like every team is sort of different. Like the character of the team is different. Like every year to year, I know it was for me, even just in college, like each team I played with was different. And even after college as well, playing in San Diego. So like, can you tell me a little bit about like the culture of the team in terms of like the attitude, the mindset from coaching on down to the players, not just even the starters, but, bench players as well. Like, what was sort of the attitude and mindset and the culture of the team that you think allowed you guys to be successful? I mean, obviously, no shit, like talent plays a role, but like in terms of just the actual team chemistry and culture, like what was it about that team that was like so different?
Yeah, that's a great question. We really pride ourselves on being like relentlessly competitive. So we knew going into every game, we had an expectation to win, and we knew that we were the better team, but it was being relentless and not taking we kind of say in rugby, it's a bit graphic, but like, don't take the foot off the throat once it's there. Yeah. Like, be ruthless, and every minute of the game, really put them to the sword, every team that comes and takes us on. So we actually, in preseason, Bozier, our manager, is he's like ex-Marine, and we go to 29 Palms for a week, which is, it's not tropical. It's not like a preseason holiday. It's definitely the opposite of that. But do you know what? In terms of perspective and where it takes you during that season, when you're in those tough moments, that week really gives us that perspective in a sense that like, all right, if we can get through that as a squad, we can get through anything. And it did generally give the boys a real perspective going into those tough moments and playing in those games together, knowing that I can get through it, and I know my teammates can get through it. So, like I said, that along with the help of our fans, like making the noise, getting us through those tough moments in games, like that's what made us successful last year.
Absolutely. Now, the team this year, though, as we talked about before we started recording, looks a little different. Because as you said, some of the players went on from last year to now they're in Super Rugby. Other players left as well. Can you talk a little bit about how the team looks different? And obviously that's challenging, but also what there is to sort of look forward to for this year.
Yeah, on that, I think it was five guys we've lost to Super Rugby that deserved 100%. That for viewers that maybe don't understand the landscape of rugby league, Super Rugby is the like New Zealand and Australian league that has arguably the best club rugby teams in the world, professional rugby teams in the world, and we lost 5 guys to that league. So like I said to you before, it's bittersweet. It's awesome to see them go and do that, and I know Danny is like a massive advocate for helping boys develop, and if that's their goals, and I know Ryan's the same. He's like, if we lose players to bigger leagues and things like that, he's not got a problem with that. Like he's really happy to see that happen. So and like I said, Ryan and Danny give the coaches a lot of kind of tools to go and recruit the players that they want, and I know that the signings that are coming in to replace those guys are, if at least going to be on par. So we're not going to lose a huge amount in terms of ability, but those guys will be missed, of course, within the culture and within the team, but I'm sure those other guys are going to slot just in as well. Yeah.
What is that like? I mean, I know like year to year, which each team looks different, leaders sort of step up in the clubhouse. People step up on the club to say, hey, like I'm going to take charge. I'm going to like take that position of leadership. Do you feel like that's that's already happening, or how do you see that sort of developing on the team in terms of people taking up leadership roles, whether it's yourself or others, and sort of leading that club towards more success?
Yeah, I think generally with continuity in a squad, leaders will develop, and we'll see as the season comes on. But in terms of like our senior group, we've not lost anyone really apart from one player. But I'm super confident, and one thing that I really loved about last year was like there were so many different opportunities for different guys to step up and lead, and everyone did that. Not always like it's never going to be perfect. Not everyone's going to lead 100% perfectly every time, but we have enough experience in the team. We've got Ma Nonu, Marcel Bracchi, Isaac Ross, Blair Cowan, all test match rugby players, super rugby players, but most of all just great blokes that are willing to help out and have this massive amount of knowledge to pass on to players. I might have missed a couple there, but they're the four that I can think of going into next season that are going to be there, and I personally lean on a lot, being a young fly half. In terms of my rugby career, they're guys I definitely lean on, whether I'm playing fly half or fullback. They're definitely guys I lean on for advice and feedback and things like that, as well as the coaches.
Yeah, talk a little bit about now you're also your own career path as a professional. I mean, coming out of Scotland, having the experiences that you had, you've played internationally, but talk a little bit about how, I mean, obviously you love the game of rugby, but how it went from just, I love this game, I'm playing this game, and you were in Scotland, to the point of where you started to see a vision for yourself where you could actually envision yourself playing professionally, playing at the level you do now. Like, talk about that sort of transitional period in your life.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I think I've always kind of just assumed that's what I was going to do. It was never really a question of, okay, now I've figured out I want to do this. Like, from when I can remember, it's like I want to be a pro rugby player. From my earliest memory, I think all I did was go and watch my dad play, and go when my dad became a coach, go and follow him around, and all I wanted to talk about was rugby. All I wanted to do was rugby. This was a bit, rugby obsessed. And then, when I was at school, I went to like quite a big private school where rugby, like in the UK, you basically, to have the chance of going professional, you got to go to a private school. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Not to say that guys that go to state schools don't go pro, but it's just much more common. So I went to one of those and absolutely loved it. I think I left school having only lost like 4 games of rugby in my life. So I went to a pretty successful school, and I loved my time there. And I think like 20% of the Scotland World Cup squad was from that school, and relatively young guys.
Name of the school?
Strathallan School. Yeah, it's in Perthshire, in Scotland. It's fantastic school. Great rugby there, and it's
Was it like a boarding school or private school?
It was a private boarding school, but like you could be day pupil as well. So I was a day pupil, but so I went from there and then went straight into the academy at Glasgow Warriors. And the one thing about Scotland is there's only 2 professional rugby teams, which a lot of people are surprised about. America,
I didn't know that.
America actually already has the 3rd most professional rugby teams in one country, which is, when you actually start telling people that, they're like, wow, and there's still a lot of growth to come. So so there's only 2 professional rugby teams in Scotland. I did a couple years there, did one of the years on loan in France playing, which was interesting. Did a lot of boxing, really. It was like on the field, just there's a lot of fights in that league.
Really?
So, yeah, I'm not much of a fighter.
Is it just like a different like culture in terms of like the on-field environment, or like what
massively? Yeah, it's more like war. Like they are little cities or like countries, and they're like going to war.
They just like sort of take pride in like, okay, I'm from this city, like
super
I'm
proud
from
people,
this place, and like I'm representing my people.
Yeah, and it's a very common thing for game plans to have in them, like for scrum, we're having a fight.
Okay,
and they believe that this is, this was the Fédéral 1, so it was like the 3rd division in France. Still professional, but it was hectic to say the least.
yeah.
But then after that, I went back to Scotland for the Scotland Sevens. Was meant to do 2 years there, but after 1 year I was just like, look, I need a change of scenery, want to do something else. COVID kind of started as well, so I'm actually a quarter Hong Kong Chinese, my mum's half, so I qualified for the Hong Kong national team, and their national team was like a full-time professional rugby team, so I went and signed a couple-year deal with them.
So you're 7s, and then you went to playing 15s
back to 15s in Hong Kong, where they basically place you at a team as well, and you play in that league. But with COVID at the time, the Hong Kong restrictions were a bit crazy, so didn't play very much rugby there. But what I did do is I played and met a guy called Jack Wiggins, who is the defense coach for San Diego Legion.
Okay.
And when I was there, with COVID, he was also like looking for other opportunities, so he left, came here, and then basically just brought me with him.
So you're in Hong Kong. You meet the defensive coach for the Legion while you're out there, and then he essentially recruits you back to Legion post-COVID.
Yeah, pretty much. Just at the back end of the 2022 season, I think there was a a couple of games left. They wanted a 10, and he knew that I was like ready just to go. Like single dude, no one else to kind of worry about. Let's just go.
So he brought you in mid-season?
No, like end of season.
End of season.
I came in, I played 2 games.
That had to be challenging.
Yeah, because I hadn't played in 11 months. Yeah. So it was pretty hectic. They were like, "Are you fit? Like, are you ready?" And I was like, "Yep." I hadn't ran in ages. Like, I just needed the opportunity. So I was just like,
you're like, I might not get this again. Like,
yeah, I'm sweet. Let's go. Ended up coming off in the first game with cramp.
Hey there, San Diego. I've been using Dorado nutrition supplements for a little while now, and I can tell you they've made a huge difference in my health journey. Not only are they made in the USA with high-quality ingredients, but they're also rigorously tested for purity, potency, and safety. And the results speak for themselves. With ingredients like Fidosia agrestis and Tonkat Ali, I've seen more energy, better gut health, improved T levels, muscle mass, and performance. And the best part is that you can get $5 off of your next purchase with the promo code STAYCLASSY at checkout. Trust me, if you're looking to take your health and performance to the next level, Dorado Nutrition is the way to go.
After 60 minutes, but
that's what's tough about being, I feel like, put into those like kind of substitute roles in rugby. As somebody who played from the bench in many cases, it was like, you only get so many opportunities to sort of show the coaches, show your teammates.
I actually ended up starting that game.
Yeah,
starting
exactly.
Straight in starting.
Yeah, so. But I'm saying like you for the minutes that you have, you so have to take advantage of it.
Oh yeah,
because you don't know. Yeah. When that opportunity will present itself again.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's impressive that you're able to come in that late and still have an impact.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, no, for sure. And
it's
not
think, common.
No, it was challenging, and there was a little bit about me as well that like I was kind of playing for a job as well. So I was kind of under that pressure of like, look, we'll have you to the end of the season, but like there's no guarantees for next year kind of thing. Yeah. But I did enough to sign a long-term deal, so I was super stoked with that.
What's the deal for?
I signed a 3+1. So I've still got another couple of years, which, I love San Diego, and I feel like I got a lot to repay them. Like, I'm super grateful to Ryan, Darren, Danny, and Jack, obviously, for giving me this opportunity and getting me back out there, because there was a point in Hong Kong where I was like, I might just go corporate, just finish up with rugby, take the easy route and stop chasing that dream. But this has really kind of revitalized and made me reanalyze my goals going forward, and I've got hugely exciting, potentially 10 years more playing rugby. So
it seems like coming to San Diego, you sort of rediscovered your love for the game, as it were, and it went from like, oh, this is just like something that's a part of me, to like, no, this is like at the core who I am.
Yeah, for sure. Like I need that weekly competitive kind of stimulus. Like, I need to be week in, week out playing rugby. That's when I'm my best self, and I'm in that kind of routine of just being competitive week in, week out. Like, I'm an athlete at heart. That's what I want to be doing. And massively, like, I think as well, I'm a big advocate for American rugby. I think rugby really needs America right now. Like, it's purely just something as simple as the way you guys support sports. It's almost frowned upon in the UK when someone shouts too loud for a team. Where it's here, it's like the opposite. If you're not making any noise, people get into you about it, being like, hurry up, let's go. Like,
what's the deal?
Yeah, and I absolutely love it. Like, coming from out to in, a lot of my friends are like from the UK, they're like, oh, it's the Americans, like they're a bit crazy, like a bit cringe with sports and stuff. And I was like, oh, well, we'll see. And I got here and I was like, nah, it's the best. It's the best. You guys are going to save rugby, I think.
I feel like the potential is there, right? For American rugby. I mean, in terms of, you already have a culture that loves sports. You have a culture that, American football is so popular, and really, we've already seen like some crossover, and we don't have to get into this, but there's been some crossover from American football to rugby and back and forth. So I feel like
I think American football originated from rugby as well.
Yeah, no, it did. Yeah. It did. And people forget that, but it's like the reality is that I feel like the potential for rugby to take off America is so real, like both among fans, among players. Like, I think schools, like not just universities, but also even at the lower level, I feel like schools have the resources and like the just the structure in place to have rugby be successful at the local level. So I feel like everything's kind of there. It just sort of hasn't happened, and I'm wondering like what it'll take. But
I think it's going to take time. Like the one thing I like about the MLR is the guys that are owning these teams they're businessmen. They're smart businessmen that love rugby. So it's a startup company. They're going to run it right. They're going to build it right. These things take time. And I think it's people being able to see that big picture that can really see like you said, the potential of the sport in America. Going back to kind of like the numbers, like there's 360 million people in America. There's 5 million in Scotland. Right? There's only 2 pro teams in Scotland. There's 13 pro teams in America, maybe 14. But for me, it's like, looking at our viewers last year at Snapdragon, we were averaging between 7 and 8,000 a game. Okay, we're probably the most supported team in the MLR, but going to Glasgow, for example, the team I used to be at, they're at the top of the URC league at the moment, which is all the professional teams from Scotland, Ireland, Wales, and South Africa. They're at the top there. They average between 5 and 6. Edinburgh, about the same. So we're already matching, if not more, than some of the top teams in Europe, purely just because of the size of America. If you can attract 1% of 360 million people, that's a lot of people that are going to be supporting rugby. So and I think that's where, in 2031, when the World Cup comes here, that's where we're really going to see it. And your point on the schools as well, we've actually been going in through Imagine Rugby, which is headed up by Kylie Patterson. She is absolutely awesome at kind of getting us out to schools in San Diego County and introducing the game of rugby to people, to young kids from elementary to high school. And yeah, look, we go to some schools and they're not mad about it. They're really confused, but we've not been to one single school yet where we've not had a group of kids coming up to us and then being like, where can I go and play? Where can I watch? They start to get fascinated by it.
And that's the thing, that, like, as I said, the potential's there. And also, and I want to talk about Imagine Rugby, but I just want to say, like, for rugby as a sport, like, I think there's this kind of this perception that, it's more of a, European sport, it's more of an international sport, not as much an American sport. But I think, like, personally, the opposite. I think at its core, it's almost very American. We love our contact sports. We love, as I said, we love football. So it's like, in some ways, it's kind of meets the culture where it's at in a way. And so I think that, and you have, like, even as I said, when I played at UCLA, we had D1 football players, dropping out of the football team to play rugby. Like, there was a huge appetite for it. And I think it's just the lack of awareness. And I think that the more aware people are, the more you're going to see that transition to rugby being a very culturally American sport. But yeah, so on that note, though, I wanted to talk a little bit about Imagine Rugby. So for people who aren't familiar with the concept, like, can you just talk a little bit through, like, how this started, what was the impetus for it, and sort of the impact that it's having on, like, the connection between youth sports and rugby?
Exactly what you're saying, just kind of trying to grow the game. Whether that be through participation or viewership, like, both come hand in hand, I feel. So what kind of the Imagine Rugby kind of concept is, we're going into schools, introducing them to rugby, introducing them to flag rugby. So it's not the contact version, which is probably the version that a lot of newcomers, especially young kids, are going to be, generally a lot of the questions we get at the start are, how many times have you broken a bone? How many times have you been knocked out? Does it not really hurt? Like, you're not wearing pads. All those questions. So it's kind of teaching them that, like, look, you can play this fun game that's challenging, and it's similar to football, but you can do flag like you do flag football, so you can do flag rugby. So it's introducing them to that. I think there's a tournament for all the schools the start of December that all the schools that we've been around and introduced to are going to bring a team and they're going to compete and things like that. But the main thing that we're trying to do is just build the sport, just introduce people, so the next time rugby pops up in a conversation, they can be like, oh, I've done rugby. I've learned about rugby. You can only pass backwards, or to score a try, you've got to touch the ball over the line. You can't just throw it down. Which is I love it. I think it's so funny when you go to these skills and it takes like 10 times to like teach them that, like, look, when you get over the try line, you can't just throw it down. That's not going to count. You're not going to get the points for that. Or they're running and they'll panic and
ball can't just cross the line.
They'll just throw it forward. Then they'll be like, oh no, I should have just. I need to pass backwards. But there's like I'd say about 10 of us that are kind of stick around in the off season, and I play a lot of golf in the off season. But when I'm not playing golf, I'm generally out kind of trying to build the game, as you say.
Sure. Imagine Rugby, in terms of like where people can access it, where people can like kind of look for this. Like, can you talk a little bit about the accessibility of it and how like anyone can get involved?
Yeah, that's a little bit above my pay grade. I think Kylie and a couple of other front office staff, they kind of organize between the schools, and then we just kind of get told where to go. So
sure, no, that's fine.
A bit above my pay grade. But
you guys have social media or anything? Or?
Yeah, so there's an @Imagine Rugby on Instagram. You can find out all the information there. There's plenty of stuff on the Legion page about it as well on Instagram, which is @ST Legion, I think. So
let's say somebody's listening to this, they're like, maybe they have a kid, or maybe it's a young person themselves who's like interested in being involved in rugby in San Diego. What do you think is like the best place to start, or like
in terms of rugby?
Yeah.
Come to a Legion game.
Come to
a Legion game. We put on skills clinics before every game for all ages. And you can come and just, no matter what age you are, no matter what ability, just come, and we will have players that are not playing and some coaches there introducing you to the game, there to ask questions, answer questions, and come to a game. I think that's where a lot of people fall in love with it. They come and they watch, and then they're like, that looks so fun, I want to get involved. And it is truly a game for everyone. Rugby is the only sport in the world that is exactly the same rules for men and women.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
and it's for all shapes and sizes. You know, you look at me, I'm not the biggest guy in the world, not the smallest guy either, but then you've got some absolute monsters that play, and you've got some really tiny guys that play, and it's a game where you utilize all your different strengths. You know, you get
Yeah.
a small guy on a big guy with a ball, he might
It's-
run round him, but the other guy gets the ball, he might just run over him.
Yeah, that's what's always struck me about the sport. It's like so egalitarian in the sense that, like, you know, as opposed to American football, where it's very specialized. You know, you play tight end, you play offensive lineman, you play wide receiver, etc. Like, it's a very specialized skill set. But rugby, it's like you do everything. You play defense, you catch, you pass, you tackle, you get tackled, and you have to know how to play all these different roles. But at the same time, it's very egalitarian in the sense that, yeah, it doesn't matter like how big or small you are. I mean, of course, maybe if you're like forward versus back, but aside from that, like. I mean, I've played with skinny players. I've played with, you know, heftier players. I've played with people of every different shape and size, and it's more about, to me, it's sort of more about the mental discipline that goes into it, and whether ultimately you have that mental discipline to, you know, be able to take a hit, get up, you know, support your teammates. That kind of resolve, to me, sets rugby apart in terms of you don't necessarily have to, you know, run a whatever it is 40 dash, or you don't necessarily have to be able to bench 4 plates, but at the end of the day, it's more about like, do you have sort of the mental resolve, the guts to, you know, go on and push yourself in a situation when, you know, you're breathing so hard, you feel like you're about to pass out. You know, you got a guy running down the barrel who's 300 pounds with the ball about to truck you. Like, whether you have sort of the mental test for those situations seems to be more important than your particular body type or skill set.
You've hit the nail on the head there, especially at like the top level. You see South Africa at the World Cup recently, they won their last 3 games by 1 point.
Yeah.
And if the South Africans are known for anything, it's for being just brutal, physicality, relentless, and working hard. They obviously have a bigger cause. You can tell when they play, they're playing for their country. They're saying that you play for your country, and then they're saying that you genuinely play for your country. And like, they know the effect that winning a World Cup and winning international rugby test matches has on their country. It really unifies their nation. So you can see that. And I'm not saying that every team has to try and get that together to win rugby games, but you are going to get into situations in big games that you're playing against. There's 2 teams that are of equal ability, and they're just going hell for leather at each other. And that's exactly what you said. Like, it's getting off the ground, having that mental resolve, having that discipline to keep going. And whoever keeps going the longest and is willing to go the extra kind of yard for their mates, the team that's going to win. So
yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, like, I think about, you know, the first time I ever played rugby, and, you know, there's practice, you know, you catch and pass, you know, you're playing touch, whatever. But it's the first time that you really get hit, that you sort of discover, I feel like, what you're made of as a player. And really kind of as a man, or I guess, you know, women play too, so as a human being, but like you kind of like, you get up and you kind of have a come to moment, you know, where you're like, okay, this is what it is, and how am I going to respond accordingly? And so, and obviously there's other contact sports, but I think rugby is unique in terms of the way it tests your character, both as an individual and as a teammate, right? Because there's the collective mentality that it takes to win. I mean, I've seen talented teams underperform because the chemistry wasn't there, but I've seen maybe not as talented teams overperform because of that team chemistry. So talk a little bit about how rugby is unique in that, like, cultural sense of, you know, sort of team chemistry, team unity, and like what it takes to be a successful ball club.
yeah, and I think that's a tough question, because I've been in so many different cultures where they kind of, in terms of playing in different countries, that the cultures are super different. Like, I'll just talk about the Legion one. Like, we've got such a diverse group of guys that are different ages, different backgrounds, different experience, which is the main one. Like, you can see in training, like, for example, for me last year, I played a lot of games with Ma'anonu at 12, who, you know, just being purely transparent, he's probably the best guy to ever play in that position in the history of rugby. And you asked me even 18 months ago, would you ever dream of playing with him? I'd just laugh at you. So that comes with its strengths and weaknesses, because he's obviously seeing things that I don't see, and he's hugely more experienced than me, to a sense where, like, this is maybe leading away from the question a little bit, but like, he on the field is such a phenomenal operator that sometimes he makes mistakes, other guys make mistakes around him, because he's just like on a completely different page. Like, he's just seeing things that we don't even recognize, because he's just been there, done that so many times. He's played for the All Blacks over 100 times and won 2 World Cups, and hugely accomplished guy. Whereas I'm still trying to grow and learn a lot of the foundations of playing at that level, and trying to adapt my game and my strengths to become, you know, more of a well-rounded kind of player to suit whoever I play with.
Hey San Diego, Steve here from the Stay Classy Pod, and I'd like to invite you to join me and the legendary group at the Hard Rock Hotel for this year's New Year's Eve Bash Glitz and Glam 2024. This full hotel party will feature 3 floors, 7 rooms of music, and over 15 DJs, and trust me, they are all set to make your New Year's Eve absolutely unforgettable. We are also excited to announce you can now use our own Stay Classy link for exclusive access to the cheapest tickets possible. Don't miss out on San Diego's ultimate New Year's Eve celebration. And as always, stay classy, San Diego. What's the phrase where it's like rugby's the gentleman's sport that's played by...
It's a hooligan sport played by gentlemen. Yeah, that's literally what it is.
Yeah,
but that's what I'm trying to say. You get those diverse guys that will meet on the field and they'll, go for it for each other and they'll have a crack at each other. Even in training, it gets physical. But then after your boys, your boys,
crack a beer,
we go down to First Street, play some pool. There you
go.
That's where we're at.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that. Like socially, I think this is something a lot of people don't understand about rugby. If you haven't played or if you haven't been around rugby players, is the social aspect of it too is very different. I feel like in terms of both how you interact with your own teammates, and how you interact with the other team even. Because, and I know you had your experience in France where there was the on the field fighting, but I feel like all in all, that's sort of the exception for rugby culture. Like the ball clubs that I've played with, like you have, as you said, your enemies on the field, but your boys off the field, you're challenging each other, you're pushing each other, but there's a sense of camaraderie. And for me, and obviously I've never played anywhere close to professional level, but for me, even it was between the opposing teams themselves, or afterwards we would go socialize, we'd crack some beers together. We would, take them out to eat, take them to our parties or whatever. There was a sense of camaraderie even between teams and kinship, where if you see another rugby player anywhere around the world, you're instantly boys. It's just like that there's that level of social connection and that affinity for other rugby players that I don't see in other sports that I've played in.
Nah, you're 100% right. And that's like a massive kind of thing that's really helped me whenever I've gone and to these new places to play. Like I've always had rugby, and I've always had rugby to kind of build that network of initial kind of foundation for a friend group and people to hang out with and things like that, which is hugely important when you're moving countries and moving cities, whatever it is. But with rugby, you're 100% right. You go against this team and it's like almost like an absolute non-negotiable is after you go and have a beer with them. You go and have a sit-down meal and you converse, and generally you see the 2 guys that have gone hardest at each other on the field will be sitting with each other after, and it's almost like a gentleman's agreement. It's like, we're gonna go hard, but I'll meet you in the bar after for a beer. And
there you go.
I've seen guys punch, allowed to swear?
Go ahead.
Punch shit out of each other on the field, and then after they're having a beer, their arms around each other. You see them in the club after, and they're still together, buying beers, and it's like
you don't see that in every sport. It's not the case. I would say even in
nobody takes anything personally on the field.
No,
in rugby.
No. I think it's just not the same. And one thing I'll say too is the way that the sport brings people in, develops players, I think is awesome. Like when I started playing rugby, I had no prior experience at all, and I had a ball club, as I said, in New England that took me under their wing. And there's just an incredible amount of focus on learning and on player development in rugby. And as I said, with other sports where you have to have a certain skill set or you have to have a certain body type or whatever, but with rugby, really just taking anybody and everybody off the street and sort of saying, hey, you can play this sport too. And that sort of arms open approach to the sport, I think is awesome for new developing talent.
Yeah, for sure. You've hit the nail on the head again. There's a spot for everyone in a rugby team. We, and my school team is a perfect example. We had loads of guys that wanted to play, and no matter what your body shape was, there's going to be a position for you. There's going to be, no matter what your strength, there's going to be a position for you, and that's on and off the field. We even had guys that wanted to be involved, but they were like, don't really want to play. I'm not that good. I don't want to get hurt, and or I've got a bad knee, those guys. I used to be amazing, but I got a bad knee. Those guys. But we would be like, all right, well, you can be kit guy, or you can be on the camera, things like that. We'd get them involved. They'd be on the team bus. They'd be like, all right, it's school, so you're not chugging beers or that, but they're still at the back of the bus, getting filled in and things like that, and having a good time. So yeah.
And I want to talk about too, individually for you. I mean, and this is something we try to bring up every podcast is in terms of what allows people to be successful at the level that you've achieved. Talk a little bit about because you're right, rugby does have a position for everyone, but it still takes an incredible amount of mental resolve, incredible amount of focus, discipline. I would argue just as much as any other sport, if not more, in terms of the training, the physical level, the mental, the discipline, the strategic aspect component of it at the level you play. It's incredible. So talk a little bit about how you've been successful in terms of your level of discipline, your level of personal routine. Like what do you put in day to day that allows you to achieve what you have achieved?
I love being busy.
Yeah.
So my thing is when I'm busy, I'm like my most efficient self. Like I get a lot done, and my mind is clear and things like that. And I think my biggest thing, like when I've played my best rugby, I'm playing week in, week out. Like back to back weekends. I'm in my kind of flow. I've got my rhythm, like, and I'm just playing good rugby, and I make good decisions, clear decisions. And for a guy that plays most of my rugby, I play at fly half, but I can't play fullback. But like most of my rugby, I play at fly half, and a lot of that kind of job is off the field as well. You've got to be able to like kind of prepare the team for the weekend after. As soon as that other game's done, you got to look at the other games and come up with a plan. Maybe come up with some plays. You're really working close with the head coach and being like, look, this is going to work this week. This is going to work this week. This is why. You've got to have a really clear understanding of the playbook for that week, and it changes every week. So depending on who you play, you've got to have a good understanding of your teammates around you, how to get the best out of them. And sometimes, you'll have a guy that comes into the squad and he's not played all season, but there's been an injury and his confidence maybe isn't that high.
Yeah.
You've got to understand how to get the best out of him. Sometimes you can be that guy. I've certainly been in teams where, look, predominantly I'm a starter that and I've never been looked at as a guy that comes off the bench. Generally, I start or I'm not playing that week. But times when I have come off the bench, I've had to like really, because you don't get as many reps. You've got to be really disciplined and I'm definitely being honest. I've not got it right all the time. You've got to be super disciplined and getting the plays right, because 5 seconds in, you could be on.
Yeah.
Like you just don't know.
You don't know.
So that's a massive one for me, like being busy, but also like holding myself accountable within that busy schedule and making sure I get everything done that I need to do to not let the team down at the weekend. We do a thing called our whys, which we present to the squad. I don't know what the plan is for the returning players this year, but the new players will definitely be doing theirs and kind of presenting on why they play the game. And one of the boys, Christian Poidevin, who I think is a fantastic rugby player. He's an Aussie guy who plays for Legion. He's just signed a long-term deal as well, which is great for Legion. Something really resonated with me and I think I've always kind of thought about it in the back of my mind, but I've never really thought about it like openly. And he was like, look, my biggest fear when I'm playing rugby and why I work so hard is because I just don't want to let you guys down. And I think that's always kind of been in me, but it's not, I've never really spoke about it or like kind of thought about verbalized it or been forward thinking about it. Like I've always kind of had that anxiety during the week. Like I need to learn this, I need to do this. And that's why, because I just don't want to let my boys down, but not from a sense of, I don't want to let them down because they're going to be upset with me. I don't want to let them down because they're going to give me a lot of shit for it during the week.
It's holding yourself accountable.
Yeah, it is, but it's the rugby culture. And I remember it being at school as well. If you were rubbish in PE, I don't know, do you guys call it PE here?
Yeah, PE.
Yeah. If you were rubbish in PE, your mates would give you hell for that whole week. Like it's like,
you
got to be good. Otherwise you're just garbage.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about in terms of like, I mean, obviously incredible amount of discipline. You've talked about sort of the discipline that you put in week out, but just in terms of like, walk me through like, before a game, maybe before a match, like, I know for me, I sort of have my like, when I was playing rugby in school, like it was, sort of pregame rituals and stuff that I would do to sort of get myself in the correct headspace for a game. Cause it's like going to war, man. It's like really like you're going to war for 80 minutes with these other guys. Like, you're beating each other, you're beating the shit out of each other. I mean, it's brutal. And like, there's a level of mental focus and, just resolve that it takes, as we've talked about, to get you to that point. Like you can't just wake up, roll out of bed or at least I can't, and jump into an 80-minute match. Like there's kind of a build up, a level of mental focus that it takes. So talk a little bit about how you get into the correct headspace to not only play, but to play at the level that you do.
Yeah, I'm probably not the best guy to ask that question to. I'm very kind of, the way I like to do things, I kind of, like I said, I like to be busy, but I also kind of do things like when I feel like it as well. Yeah. Like, so if I wake up one day, like one thing we do as a group, like me and a couple of the boys will go down to Goudonia in Encinitas and grab breakfast. They have a game if it's a home game. That's something I really like doing, like just being social. But I like to say super relaxed. Like I don't have anything.
Keep it light.
Yeah, like I kind of just do whatever I feel like on that game day and be like, as long as I'm happy and I'm clear in my head and I'm comfortable, I should be good. And again, a lot of my kind of performances are kind of weighing up on like what I do during the week, but also playing week in, week out. Like that's a big thing for me. But on game day, like I could go into the change room and be like, all right, I'm gonna go kick goals, like kick at the post to warm up for a game. Some games I'll be like, nah, I'm good. I don't need to do that today.
Yeah, there's always. I feel like there's always that one guy on the team that's just like kicking goals right before the game.
Yeah. Some
Just,
like
with his
I
headphones
think
in. Like,
I'm probably an anomaly. Like I
Yeah.
think a lot of guys do that, but I've found in the past that like I can really kind of mess with my like rhythm if I go and kick before a game because
Okay.
I'm just like thinking about other things. Whereas I've done that during the week. I've kicked my whole life. I should just be, confident that I've done enough to be ready at the weekend,
Yeah.
like to hit those couple of goals. But I might change my mind about that coming into the next season. I might be like, nah, I want to hit like 3 or 4 goals in every warm up or whatever. But at the moment, the way I am, very relaxed, like throw a couple passes, get into the team warm up, stay chill. Like music, I like music. I like having music on. Nothing specific. Again, just kind of hit shuffle.
Yeah, I feel like everyone's kind of different though, right? Like for some people to be successful at that level, it is
Yeah.
like the relaxation thing.
Yeah.
Other people, it's like, man, they're locked in. They're doing push-ups. They're doing drills.
No, for sure.
They're like, there's a level of intensity that they take all the way into the game. But then there's people like you where it's like sort of keeping yourself relaxed, keeping things light, keeping things fun.
Yeah.
Is sort of the key to success.
Yeah, fun's a massive keyword for me.
Yeah.
That's something I definitely should have used. Like, if I'm having fun, I'm good. Like, I'm happy. And I definitely, like you said, there's definitely guys that are doing down and ups and sprints, and like that's probably my worst nightmare for a while.
Yeah.
I don't need to do that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I would say that like for me, it's interesting because people always ask me like, are you are you nervous, et cetera? And it's like the reality is, man, I'm nervous before every game. Like every game that I play, I'm nervous. There's stuff in my butterflies in my stomach.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I've yacked a few times before games. Like it's just there's a level of anticipation of like, man, like I'm about to go to war for 80 minutes with these guys, and I better be on my best game. So of course there's a level of nerves, but when people ask you like, are you nervous? Like you're afraid of getting hurt, this, that, the other. Like how do you sort of like treat that element of in terms of like just fundamentally as a human being, we're all afraid, but like how you personally deal and compartmentalize fear.
Yeah, I think like again, like my position, I had a thing kind of instilled into me when I was younger by a academy coach that he said you should be able to play rugby in a dinner suit. So like my thing is like I'm not going out there ready to kind of whack people and get whacked. Like I probably will be getting targeted just because of the position I play, but I can see why. Like there's definitely guys in our team that are did you say yak? Is that like be sick? Yeah. So like there's definitely guys in our team that like yak before games and get super intense and want to get angry, and that's part of their routine. But for me, like I've got to be so clear-headed and so level-headed and so composed. Like that's a really big strength. Like if a 10 is composed, like a 5's composed, that's a really good strength of theirs. So that's a lot of my kind of thinking when it comes to that part of the day. Like of course I'm going to be nervous. But I'll say there's one thing that makes me more nervous. If I haven't gotten my prep as well as I could have done during the week, that makes me more nervous because I know I'm not as well prepared.
Sure.
But again, like if me personally, what makes me like kind of less nervous, like I've been playing rugby a long time, been professional for like 7 years. And I've played in some big games and some not so big games. I probably get more nervous for the games that are not as big.
Interesting.
I enjoy it's more of an excitement. The big games, like there's one thing I'm trying to work on going into next season is like every game's a big game, because I've like throughout my career I've always kind of really enjoyed the big games, played well in big games, but like being fully transparent, probably didn't in the championship final this year, probably didn't perform to the level I was used to in big games, and I kind of that made me realize, being like, all right, I need to kind of pull my shit together and make sure I'm treating every game like a big game, and making sure I'm preparing like that and performing like it's a big game every game. So because you know what it's like in any sport, you're gonna have games that are you turn up against a team, you're gonna beat them. Like it's the same as when you're the team and you're playing against, you're the bottom team, you're playing against the top team. Your coach is like, come on, we can do it, you're gonna win. Like, in the back of your head, you know you ain't gonna win that game. And we had the opposite issue with that. We could have turned up this year with half a team against some teams and still won, and that's a super confident thing to say, but it's facts. Like that played detriment to us, I think, in the long term, because a lot of our boys knew that. Like we could turn up today, not play that well, and still win.
So keeping that edge was difficult, like in terms of keeping the edge of like, okay, we have to be at our best every single game, no matter what, otherwise we might lose. But it's hard to do that when you're playing in games and game situations where you're gonna win. You just on a talent level, you're not in the same scope as and I
think that's what we recruited a lot of guys, whether it was on purpose or not, I don't know, but we recruited a lot of guys that are winners. They're used to winning. Their expectation of every game is to win.
Yeah. Because you want that standard in the locker room. You want that standard like, behind the scenes.
Yeah, and it kind of happened without it being drilled into anyone. It just was a thing. And like I said about that kind of relentless kind of foot on the throat kind of thing, it was there, but that doesn't always mean that your performances are up there.
Yeah.
The intention is there and like the mindset's there, but it doesn't mean the performances are there because you've still got that thing in the back of your head that's like, all right, we're going hard, we're going good, but we could take the foot off the gas and we're still going to win this game, which, it was a tough learning for us last year, I think, and having still a large majority of the squad coming back with that chip on our shoulder, knowing that, again, if I'm going to be brutally honest, like the horrible thing about competition is, especially competitions with playoffs, is that you can be the best team in the league in the country for 364 days, but that one day on the championship final, if you're not the best team, you're not the best team in the league.
Matter.
But if we played, New England 10 times out of 10, we beat them 9. They played well. They got the better of us on that day, beat us by a point. But if you look at who the best team was all last year in 2023, it's Legion.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about like that, sort of the takeaway from that experience. I mean, you already talked it through a bit, but I know playing in those close games, like it's great when you're on the winning side. When you're on the losing side, man, it's tough. And there's like a sort of, I won't say like a hangover from that, but there's like a sense of like, man, like, going back in your mind, thinking what you could have done differently, what the team could have done differently, what this, that, and the other. But how do you sort of compartmentalize that? Say, all right, that's the past, that happened. Yeah. But we're still the Legion. We're still the best team on the block. We're still moving forward into the next season. How do you sort of push out the negativity?
Being brutally honest, it's tough. Like it's really hard, especially when it's, the only way to really rectify it is go and win and go and play. And we've got to wait 6 months to do that. So it's been super hard. Like it probably was the hardest point in my career, like mentally. Like
after that game.
I'm like I said, I take it for what it is. Like I've got a good perspective on life, and it is just rugby at the end of the day. But I really struggled with that one. It was super tough, just because it was
it sucks, man.
We deserved, like we know we deserved it.
Yeah.
We just a couple of things, like personally got a couple of things wrong in the championship final. I was just like, God, like I've had those opportunities in the past and I've nailed it. So it wasn't a case of being like, I can't do that, but it's a case of being like, you get one shot in that moment, and then it's like, you don't get it right. God, it's hard, because you're like, now the only way we rectify it is we go and get the job done next year, which I'm more than confident we will. Yeah, it's just you got to be super patient.
I mean, not to make you forecaster, but I mean, looking at this season, looking at the teams that are sort of in the way, the teams that you're matching up against, do you, like, in your heart of hearts, believe that this is like sort of the year to pull off the championship?
Yeah, for sure. I think the core of our squad last year, like there's majority of them are sticking around, and talking to Danny as well, he it's like a job not finished kind of mindset for next year. And we've got a good group of guys that, again, we're going to have great depth. There's going to be competition in every position. I know we're signing some really good guys in my position, so I'm looking forward to that kind of competition in terms of making myself better as well. But like it's going to be a good season. We're super confident going into it. And looking out from looking at what other teams are recruiting and stuff, it's only going to become harder. But what we talked about, in terms of like how good a season we had last year, how relentless we were, and we lost in the most like agonizing ways. Yeah. It's almost like a lot of the senior boys were like, look, we've all been through this before in our careers, and it creates a monster. So now, like, that's the kind of thing I feel like a franchise needs to go through to go on and win 2, 3, 4 championships in a row. So like, yeah, I feel sorry for whatever teams are going to come up against us next year.
Yeah, dude. I wanted to ask you also, like, just as we close, like, I have a lot of memories of rugby, memories with teammates, memories on the field, but just share a couple fun stories real quick as we close, just like sort of maybe favorite memories playing for the Legion, sort of games that stand out, moments that stand out, maybe something a teammate did that stands out to you. And I know there's probably a whole library of things to choose from, but if you just had to pick a couple off the top of your head, like...
So, like, my favorite game played for Legion?
Yeah, favorite game for Legion, or, like, favorite memory from a particular game, something along those lines.
Okay, the one as, like, a franchise, I'll say, was the season opener last year.
Yeah.
We set a crowd record. It was a new team together. It was, like, Legion in the past had always been... not one of the strongest teams, but we went out and really made a statement that first game. We showed teams that we were here to play, we're here to throw the ball around, we're having a crack from everywhere in the field, like, and we really had a strong team out with, like, there was some guys that missed out on that, like, throughout the season and not playing. We're like super rugby caliber guys, like not getting a lot of game time, and Danny, it's a tough job for Danny because it's like, look, I know you're a quality player, but like we've got this guy that's just as good and he's doing a good job. I'm not just going to rip him out.
No.
And I've been both sides of that. So it's like, I can see it and you've just got to kind of respect it and be
That's
a good
hard on
teammate.
the coach.
Oh, it's so hard on the coach, but like it's a luxury as well of having that depth, knowing that if something happens, you can pull that in. So I'd say the season opener is a team one. And then the first thing that comes to mind is we were playing NOLA away and it was Matthias Frere, who unfortunately isn't coming back to Legion next year, an Argentinian, and he's one of the best guys. And he threw one of the most ridiculous offloads I've ever seen in my life in that game. But that was the first thing that came to mind of just something that makes me laugh to this day because I was like behind him and the guy
He offloaded to you?
No, I was behind him, I passed it to him and he like made a semi-middle break up the middle and this guy jumped on his back like around the ball, but he somehow got the ball and
Still got it out?
popped it out to someone and they ran it and scored. And I was just like, I went crazy. I was like, how have you done that?
Yeah,
that was ridiculous.
See some of that stuff. I mean, it's like you always like when you're watching, I'll be like, oh, why can't you just offload? It's tough when when you have the ball and you're reading the field to make that decision, to make that offload. It's tough.
Yeah.
So that decision making, the strategy part of it is tough. So it's not as easy as it looks. Like I know like people at your level make it look easy, but those offloads that's a huge decision that you have to make in the moment, and it can alter the course of a game.
Yeah, generally on that, like at the top level, you have like plays, and you'll analyze a game to the finest detail that you know that like for example, you'll know a guy in their team only makes leg tackles, so that's like a really good opportunity. You know that like, okay, if I have a go at him, he's going to try and leg chop me. And then you have guys who decide, okay, I know there's going to be an opportunity to have an offload here. So little things like that, or we'll target like a smaller guy with a bigger guy with the thought of like you're going to have a crack at him for an offload, like.
Sure.
So it doesn't always look.
Yeah, it's not.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
But it's sometimes it's a lot easier than you think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that but it comes from preparation too, right? The level of preparation you put beforehand. I mean, it's not. You don't crawl out of bed and do that again. It's just the preparation, the prep work, the strategy work, and as you said, the higher level you get into rugby, you know, from the time you're playing in school to collegiate to semi-pro to pro, there's a whole new level of evolution to the game. You start to see the game in different ways. You know, we only have a minute here, but just as the game is sort of changing, as the game is sort of evolving, like, is there any ways that you think that the sport is strategically or sort of evolved in terms of Major League Rugby that you think are the ways that the game is changing, basically?
Yeah, for sure. I think again, going back to kind of the Americanized fan base, like it's something that I was saying to you before air. I think 2031, when the World Cup comes here in 8 years, that's something that's really going to make or break rugby, and I really do think it's going to really make it. I really think rugby is going to become a huge global sport down to America. Yeah. You know, you can come and test it. SanDiegoLegion.com. You can get your season tickets now, and we put on like pre and post shows, DJs, things like that, and come and watch the best team in the country play.
Let's do it. I'm excited, man. I wanna get to a game this year for sure.
Yeah.
And one more thing is before we go, just for people who maybe missed the middle part, Imagine Rugby. How can we reach them? How can we get involved?
So yeah, Imagine Rugby at Imagine Rugby on Instagram. You can grab on there and you can have a look at what we've been doing and some skills and things like that. But also I think there should be a link on there as well for like to get the contact details for if you have a skill that you want us to come to and things like that.
Sure, absolutely. And you guys offer clinics before the games,
right? Yeah,
right?
so I think before every game there is a clinic at Snapdragon where we play for any ages. I know there was like a 65-year-old guy turned up last time and had an absolute blast. So get whatever age you are, no excuse. Get out there, learn a little bit about rugby, and then you get to come in and watch the game after. So
never too old. Never too old.
Never too old.
One more time for people who missed it, the ticket website for
so it's just sdlegion.com. You can grab season tickets. The schedule's not quite out yet, but I know I think we're looking at having. Yeah, we know there's like 3 separate conferences and things like that, but we'll play everyone at least once, home and away, and then everyone in our conference twice. So in our conference we've got Seattle, LA, and Utah. But I think we're looking at having at least 9 or 10 home games next year before the playoffs, and generally we'll have like our home conference final at Snapdragon as well. So.
All right. Well, Josh, it's been an absolute ball having you on, man. Like honestly, like I love the sport, but I love talking to rugby players. Anytime I see a rugby player in the world, even when I was in Germany this past year and I met a couple of rugby players, and it's always a pleasure. It's always a gift to be able to talk about the game with someone else who understands the game, especially at the much higher level that you do. I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure having on, man. Just continue to spread the love of the game, spread the gospel of the game. It's important, I think, for young people to see somebody in your position achieving the level of success that you have, and to see that happening, here locally in San Diego is awesome. And
Sweet.
Just thanks so much for coming on the show.
No,
man.
appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Go
Thank you.
Legion.
Appreciate it. Yeah, go Legion. Let's do it.
All right, that's a wrap, guys.
This has been another recorded episode of Stay Classy San Diego with your host, Steve Wire. Thanks again to our sponsor, MaxLux Media and maxluxmedia.com. Check us out at stayclassypod.com or any of our social media outlets. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and everywhere else you get your podcast content. Please like and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us continue bringing you important content that you're not going to see anywhere else. And thanks to all of our listeners for tuning into the show. See you next time. Stay classy, San Diego.